Ryan, I forget how this song goes. We should do something. Do we even know? All right, now you're just celebrating it. I just at some point feel like we should just go through the entire opening song for this and see what it sounds like.
I have no idea. We know about the first 30 seconds.
Yeah,
all right, let's start talking about something.
Yeah.
All right, let's kill that because I'm afraid to know what it sounds like. All right, everybody. Welcome to another live Q&A. Glad you're here. This is all about you, and so we're going to give people time to join in. I know it takes a few minutes to get the live stream going, and so we got, I think, 10 that we know of right now watching. Here we go. Todd, I'm being encouraged.
Don't encourage him, Mary.
Thank you, Mary.
He does it when I'm in a really bad mood because it always makes me laugh.
Yep.
Not today. I'm not in a bad mood today. I'm not insinuating I'm in a bad mood.
Not yet.
Yeah, we'll see what your questions out there.
It's early. So. All right. Let's see here. Weird water bottle. All right.
I've got all kinds of stuff. I've got iced tea. I've got coffee. I've got a water bottle.
Todd, check this thing out.
Oof, jeez.
Days worth of water. Pretty crazy, right? Look at this. Love the music.
Oh boy.
All right. You know what? I think we can jump into some questions. I think we got about 20 watching now. Some people preloaded some questions. Let's take care of some easy ones real quick. Do we have a set schedule? We're working on it. Sometimes it's ad hoc. It's going to be around our teaching schedule. Mm-hmm. So this week, Thursday worked best. There's actually another Q&A that goes live every week. So Bob Galen and Josh Anderson over at the Metacast, they do a Wednesday thing, and we were kind of conflicting with them, and so we're sorting that out. But Zach, we'll try to be consistent, but I think this time we gave about a week's notice, so hopefully that helped. But good question.
It can be seat of our pants-ish, just to let everybody know.
Nice.
Our schedule is an ever-evolving.
Mary says hello. Mary, it's great to see you.
Hey, Mary.
Wonderful that you're here. Daniel wants to see something like this, but Spanish. I can speak just enough Spanish to upset people. So maybe we'll give that a try someday. But Daniel, good to see you. Maybe we can start with some questions, Todd.
Yeah.
Andy, could dependencies influence how the product owner orders product backlog items according to the Scrum guide? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So there's this thing. Why did that disappear? There's this thing in the Scrum, this idea of how we must order. And I think there's a myth. This could be a good myth busting opportunity, Todd. I think there's this idea that I have to value by order, or I have to order by value. Mm-hmm. I don't have enough coffee yet. I have to order by value, or I have to order by revenue, or I have to order by ROI, or some monetary or value-based thing. And while that's a good way, that's one of many good ways, I really think we need to emphasize here that the way a product backlog is ordered is at the total discretion of the product owner, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so dependencies is absolutely something that you should consider. You can also consider risk. I think all of these things go into the value conversation, right? But as a previous product owner, that's one thing you have to consider: dependency. And is it a dependency on another team? Is it a dependency on something technological that you're working on? And then is that dependency potentially going to become an impediment? And if so, that's where Scrum Masters could be creeping around the product backlog to anticipate dependencies as impediments and try to see if they can remove them. So at 100%, yeah, that's for sure that you consider dependencies. So
And
I
if we
just
elevate,
blanked out there for a second.
no, you're good. I think also, so so let's take it a step further, right? So not only should a product owner consider it, I think a product owner should be grabbing a scrum master and saying, "Hey, buddy, pal, why is this dependency here? And what can we do to get rid of it? And is this an impediment? And is this a thing that slows down delivery or puts delivery at risk? And if so, what are we gonna do?"
Mhm.
Right? So don't just accept the fact that, oh, the dependency is there and it's going to change you. No, 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 no. Grab that scrum master, figuratively, not literally, and say, "Hey, buddy, pal, we got to sort this out. I want this dependency gone. What's that investment look like? Do I need to order something higher so that this dependency disappears? Do we need to rethink our vendor contracts? Do we need to rethink the way we do development? Do we need to in-house? Whatever it is, because I think just ordering to cope with a dependency is great. What's even better is eliminating that dependency completely.
Mhm.
Cool. Andy, great question. Really appreciate it. And thanks for being here. Let's see, Zach. Zach Skaggs put a preloaded question.
Mhm.
Should one differentiate between releases and deployments?
Aha.
What do you think, Todd?
Yeah. So let's just get right at it and talk about the difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment, because there are two different things.
Yep.
Right. So when it comes to your software engineering practice, right, continuous delivery means it's ready to be released. Continuous deployment means it is released. Right. That's a big difference. That's a really big difference. And that difference to me is something that can create or hinder transparency. So I think you should make the difference between whether you are using continuous delivery as a means for software engineering practices, or you're using continuous deployment as a product management technique to deploy things very rapidly into production, and explicitly define which one you're using and exactly what it means, because they carry different meanings in a lot of organizations. Oh, we do continuous delivery because it passed a CI build. That's not necessarily the expectation there, but
Well, and I think endpoints matter too, right? Deployment to where and for whom.
mhm.
I think to your point, Todd, these things all have to be defined. In some organizations, I've seen release and deploy, they're synonyms, right? They mean the same thing. Oh, we're going to ship this thing in a 2-month cadence and it's a deployment or release. Who cares? In other organizations, to your point, like Amazon or Google or Microsoft, some of these behemoth companies, for instance, they do 1,000 deployments a day. But would they actually call that a product release? Maybe not. Maybe
Yeah.
that's something different, right? So I think great points there about definitions, but it really, depending on, in this case, Zach is saying his org is pushing to deploy more and release less. I think it depends on how you define them. So good question. Good insights there, Todd. I'm not sure I would have been able to take it in that direction. So good work, man.
Yeah, you know me.
That's your jam.
Yeah, and I've been actually coding a lot, right?
You have. Kyle. Oh, by the way, Zach and Kyle are both members of our community. That's what this little symbol means. So they enjoy the Deeper into Scrum series that's been playing lately, that we've been doing with Simon Reindl. So if you don't have that little symbol, go to the YouTube site, youtube.com/agile for humans, and get that symbol so you can check out those videos. Kyle's got a good question though. Could you recommend any good methods to identify and visualize waste or bottlenecks? Value streams come to mind, but I love your thoughts. I'd love your thoughts when you can feel delays but not see them. What do you think, Todd? Or do you want me to take a crack?
I'm wondering if there could be a specific example in here. So this is like a lean type question to me. Is that where we're going with this?
I think
Kyle?
so. I don't know. So let's start with the feel and then work into the specific, right? I get a hunch of waste or bottlenecks when item aging gets out of control, right? When we see a trend of item aging shifting up is a smell. Cycle time increasing is a smell. Throughput decreasing is a smell. So I think the flow metrics give us a feeling or an indication that something's amiss. And I think that's really important to consider. So if you have those in place and you're seeing trends in those directions, maybe that's a red alert that something could be up. There could be waste or bottlenecks. But when it comes to identifying the specifics, there's an activity that I love to run with teams. And I think it could be similar to like a value stream or some, but I really like saying, all right, we just shipped something. Now let's work backwards. What's the thing that has to happen before something goes to production? What's the thing that has to happen before that, until we get back to the creation of a PBI? And then when I have those headings set, and maybe there's 10 things that have to happen from PBI to released, now I want to know what's difficult about every one of those stages. And just have the team put up, well, this PR typically takes too long, and this group has to do a check, and the design group is backlogged. You know, for step 3, the design group has to give us an approval, and for step 7, legal steps in. And you start seeing self-identified, self-reported issues that the team brings up that start showing where the waste and bottlenecks could be. And I think that gives you yet another indication. Now you can take that information. You have data from the flow metrics. You have feedback from the team about delivery and what makes it difficult. Now you can look at your workflow definition. Do we have things in place in our workflow definition that would let us validate some of the things we identified as a team? And if the answer is no, then let's put something in that would help us measure that. If the answer is yes, take a look at that visualization and see if it's true. I mean, I think practices like that can help us better identify waste and bottlenecks and issues. And it's actually in the context of data, input from the people actually doing the work, and then validating that input through that visualization of work. Does that make sense, Todd?
Yeah. And I'm wondering if it could be just as simple as really identifying your definition of workflow, right? Somebody in their comments suggested a CFD that could potentially give you some kind of visual indicator of it, but and maybe it's just as simple as identifying a workflow, coming up with a potential area that you see as a bottleneck, and then measuring specifically things aging in there and the cycle time in that from the time it reaches that stage until the time it exits it. Here's the thing is, here's one thing I'll caution with this is like, I've seen teams get so caught up on this lean thing, becoming really efficient, that they forget about becoming effective. Right. So pair this with knowing that in the broader scheme of things, our job is to deliver to customers, and we can be the most efficient team in the world with customers that are upset with us. So I think it's really good to identify these things, and as a Scrum Master, try to eliminate bottlenecks and things like that. Don't make it your life's work. I just think that there's broader things that we can be concerned about.
Yeah, I love that point, Todd. We're looking for the big boulders that cause the water to move in a different direction. We're not worried about each and every pebble that isn't impacting us, right? Choose your battles.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great question, Kyle. It's great to see you here. Thanks again for being a member of the community. Kensai, yeah, 123, big commenter on the YouTube channel. Great to see you here. How do you start working with waterfall teams? You get in a barrel. No. I think this is a slow, and it's a long game, right? So this is, I don't know. I like finding one good practice that could help something that they're struggling with, and over time incrementally add other practices in. So whether you're using Scrum or Kanban, figure out something that could help them that comes out of one of those toolkits or both of those toolkits. I still think for my money, if I'm working with a brand new team and I want to help them improve, I'm going to implement item aging. I just want to see how long it takes for something, how long things are sitting in each state. And maybe that first step then would be a workflow definition so that we could actually have proper item aging. But my mind instantly goes there after, which if you notice has nothing really to do with Scrum or Kanban. I mean, I think item aging could be a great place to start and showing, and then getting teams to come up with ways to improve based off of those discussions. And then you're probably going to find yourself iterating into Scrum or Kanban or professional Scrum with Kanban or something there within. What do you think, Todd?
Evidence-based management.
Yep.
I would want to identify what our current goals are. And then I would want to start providing evidence in terms of how we're trying to achieve them. And if we have an iterative path to do that, which most likely it's not, right? Traditional is that we followed the plan and executed the plan. But there's problems, as we know, with that when you're working with complex things. I think that evidence-based management shines a flashlight on it very quickly. Yep. Slow step it though, because I've fast stepped it, and
go slow.
Go slow. Start if you can. Start with goals. If not, start with a discussion around the KVAs. Very likely, your KVAs are all centered around time to market when it comes to traditional project management.
Nice. All right. Great question. Abdallah, I have a question. My team has zero predictability. A lot of technical unplanned work is not measured in the sprint planning and team capacity. Todd, I think we've answered this so many times in our YouTube channel before. When unplanned work starts messing with a team's ability to predictably deliver on a sprint goal, which is how I'm going to frame this, the thing that we recommend is holding back capacity in sprint planning, right? You need to plan realistically. So if you're filling up your sprint with new work and you're planning at 100% capacity, which, by the way, if you're doing that, stop. Horrible idea. You're setting yourself up for disappointment from the outset. But again, we have plenty of videos about sprint planning and sprint goals and sprint backlogs that you can check out. But in this case, we like to hold back capacity. And so if you know that about half of your work in a sprint ends up being unplanned work, then cut your capacity in half. So in sprint planning, we're only going to plan to 50% because we know this other stuff is going to flood in. And when people start balking and saying, whoa, wait a minute, you say, look, here's all the tech debt we need to clean up. Here are all the problems we need to clean up to get this capacity back. Would you like to invest in it? Yes or no? And now you're allowing people to decide whether or not they want to buy that capacity back, or if they're cool with half of the time you're on new stuff and half of your sprint, you're fighting fires. And I think that's one of the cleaner ways to handle it. What do you think, Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I just want to be caution about the word predictability here, zero predictability, and make sure that by predictability, you don't mean the churn of work, maintaining the same velocity or maintaining the same throughput. That's not what we're trying to be predictable about. We're trying to be predictable about continuing to meet our sprint goals. And so predictability, there is no such thing as as committing to product backlog items in sprint planning. That hasn't been a thing for a very long time. Let's just make sure we erase that off the planet. So I like to always, kind of take that and make sure that that's there. Otherwise, it's quite easy to measure unplanned work, right? Was it in the sprint backlog after sprint planning? If not, it was unplanned work. Let's track it. Let's go back and historically look how much unplanned work we have. Let's make it transparent. And maybe that builds us the case of saying no during a sprint. But at least I would gather some data on it.
Love it. Very good. John C., how would you recommend measuring cycle time with widely different sizes of things? Cycle time is elapsed time. It doesn't matter the size of the thing. You're measuring elapsed time. So I don't think the measurement would change. Some things can be large, some things can be small, and elapsed time helps you see which is which. What am I missing, Todd?
So this is the same size versus right size conversation, right? So a lot of people, when they're new to the ideas behind flow, think that everything has to be the same size to create predictability around cycle time in a system, and that's not true. All right. So what we want to do, though, is we want to right size things. As you're bringing things into an active state, you can ask the question, especially if you're looking at things like service level expectation. Do we think as we activate this that we can 85% of the time we get it done 7 days or less? Is that possible? If not, can we break it down? But really, when you're looking at cycle time, it just is what it is. It's the time from when something starts until the time it ends in your workflow, from your starting and ending points. And we right size things. It's impossible to same size everything. So that's like saying every human being in the world is going to be the same size, which we know to be false. Some are going to be really big, like some of the NBA players that are like 7 feet tall. And some are going to be, like me, 5'11". So we do the best we can. We don't try to right size or same size human beings. So maybe that's a bad way to look at it, but we do the best we can to right size thing, knowing that there's going to be outliers. That's why we use probabilities when we come to forecasts.
Yeah. And John, I think a good resource on our YouTube channel would be the EBM. No, I'm sorry. We have a Fixing Your Agile Metrics where there is some good discussion around SLEs. I think we even had some discussions in the Kanban series with Dan Vicanti. So highly recommend you check those out for more info on service level expectations and how that can help you right size things so that this concern kind of drifts away. Great.
Hello,
Marguba, it's great to see you too. Thanks for being here. All right. Andrew, in your opinion, does the International Scrum Institute's SMAC cert hold up compared to other CSM or PSM? I have no idea. SMAC cert. I have no idea what the International Scrum Institute is. I've never heard of a SMAC cert. I would say if you are interested in being trained to do Scrum in a professional way, and if you're interested in concepts that align with the Scrum Guide and that are in line with one of the co-creators of Scrum, his vision on how to teach and learn and use Scrum, go to scrum.org, go to our website, sign up for a class, take an assessment, get your certification. I wouldn't go with one of these other groups like the International Scrum Institute. Never heard of it, don't know about it. Of course, the CSM, if you go through Scrum Alliance, there's some great trainers over there as well. And you can do fine there too. But for our money, I mean, Todd and I are a little biased. We're professional Scrum trainers with scrum.org. And we think that is the gold standard in certification and in training for Scrum. And we hope to see you there. But yeah, we have no opinion on this other place because we've never even heard of it.
Yeah. Can I do a quick certification rant, right?
Yeah.
So there's been a lot. I feel like this drums up every couple months, maybe every couple years about this anti-certification movement stuff, right? So, I mean, to some extent, I believe in it, right? So a certification is just validating that you learned something. It doesn't mean that you know how to implement it. I think certifications are great? Yeah, it's validating that you learned. Do I think that it means that you can practically implement it in an environment? No. I used my latest certification, right? CrossFit level 2.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that I know what I'm doing as a coach, but I have it.
Can I ask you about that though?
Yeah.
So would you say the process of attaining that certification though made you a better coach for CrossFit?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. In fact, it was a phenomenal 2-day class.
So that's the point, right? So Todd and I, when we get asked these certification questions, if someone they take a Scrum course with us for 2 days, they get certified with their PSM1, that's a great accomplishment. You have shown that you have some great knowledge about the framework. Does that mean that you are going to be qualified to go off and be a Scrum Master the next day? No. Right. But we're hoping that the training and the additional guidance and some of the other information given will set you on a path that over time and through effort and learning and application, you become a great Scrum Master. But does a 2-day class instantly make you a great Scrum Master? No. But it sets you on a course. I think another great thing that it does, and Todd, correct me if I'm wrong here, it cuts out a lot of the noise. We are able to zoom in on the things that are essential for you to learn and understand and master. It gives you a pathway forward. And that way you're saving time by working with experts. right? And I think that's true whether it's CrossFit coaching, Scrum training. My kids take lessons in sports. You're cutting out a lot of noise. You're learning the essentials. You're learning what the drills are, the books to read. And I think that's valuable too. Plus, we continue helping students pass courses. And so now you have mentors that you've aligned with, and you have a community that you've entered as a scrum.org student. And so those are the benefits of these classes. The certificate is great. They look good on a wall. They're well designed, but man, it is like step 1 of 1,000 to becoming a great Scrum Master. It's not the step.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Cool. Great question. Thank you, Andrew. Petra, hello. Glad you're here.
Hi, Petra.
How can someone without experience get hired other than volunteering as a Scrum Master? So we get this question a lot, and this is showing up a lot on TikTok, on YouTube, on Twitter. Here's the thing. If I go into a hospital and say, I want to be a surgeon, but I don't have any experience or education, and I've never worked in a hospital before, what are they going to do, Todd?
Ask you for experience, or just tell you, say goodbye.
They might take me up to the mental ward to get my head checked out, right? They're going to be like, what are you doing here? And I'm starting to kind of wheel in this direction on this question. How do you get hired to do something without experience? It's really hard, and you probably can't. Mm-hmm. What you can do is, in the place you're at, start applying the principles and the values, the Scrum values, and the framework where you can, as you can. Like, that's how I started as a Scrum Master. I was in a very Waterfall based company, doing standard PMI, old school PMP driven project management. Right. Mm-hmm. I know. Right. Everyone's like, oh, that's not good. But I went to the 2-day class with Ken Schwaber. I came back and I just started doing a retro every couple weeks. Like, hey, can we just talk about how the last few weeks went? And people are like, hey, there's some improvement items that come up. I'm like, cool. What if we started meeting each day? Just real quick to coordinate how we're going to, and over time, my management started trusting the things that we were doing because it led to good outcomes. And then we were able to build more of that into our practice. And so over a number of years, we got Scrum in place. We were able to use these practices, and I gained experience as a Scrum Master because I did what I could as I could where I was at. And I think that is one way. Volunteering is another. Hey, nonprofit organization. I would love to help you get organized, and I would love to participate, and I'd love to do some community service or some. I think that's another way. There's probably 1,000 other pathways, but expecting to get hired without experience, I think, is a very difficult road, and it's a very difficult proposition. I don't want to be mean. I don't want to burst bubbles, but being a Scrum Master is a very difficult job. It is not trivial. It requires a ton of skills. It requires a lot of experience. It requires, Todd, how many books do we have stacked on our desks at all times? We are constantly learning, reading, contemplating, and that's after very long careers in software development. Todd still writes code. I started as a developer. I went into project management. We've stayed tied to technology. It's a 20-year journey for us to be here, sitting here, giving advice on this stuff, right? So it's a long game. What do you think, Todd? Am I being too crushing here?
I just don't think Scrum Master is an entry-level position.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that, to summarize what you're saying, I just don't think it's an entry-level position. I think that you should try to bust into the, if it's tech, which a lot of what we're talking about is tech, see if you find some other facet to get in there and gain experience that you can lean back on as a Scrum Master. I just don't view it as an entry-level job.
I want to be encouraging. Take the classes, read the books, do what you can as you can where you're at. And we hope that you find opportunities to do so. But Stephanie, we appreciate you and we appreciate the question. It's a great opportunity to talk about these things. So thank you.
It does not mean don't work towards it, right?
Yeah, I start today and see where things go. Let's see here. Let's see what we got here. Can inexperienced development team that has no senior team member implement Scrum, or if they're building something new to them and have very unclear, has lots of tech debt? Probably not. And here's why I would say this, Todd. I think technical excellence is one of the foundational things for Scrum, and it sounds like we don't have that. And I don't think any framework helps a team like this until they get that sense of technical excellence. And just, the ability to work together as a team. I mean, they can use the framework, but I think it's going to be a very difficult road. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think they could. Start with the DoD. Start with a definition of done and get everybody on the same page with that, and then continue to evolve in the conversation around quality. Right? You can't. Rome wasn't built in a day. So I think that you can incrementally work towards having this team be working together and collectively being more adept at their technology. Start with a definition of done and review that every month or less.
Cool.
And then go from there.
I like it. And maybe that leads into better technical excellence, higher quality, the ability to deliver. And that opens up pathways to adopt more Scrum practices, right?
Yeah.
Love it. Todd's the optimist today. I'm the pessimist. What a role reversal. Rob, one of our members in the community, has a pro tip. If you're using Jira and you use ChatGPT to get a quick filter to get your work item age for user stories quickly, it's really helped our team. That's kind of cool. Work item age out of Jira using ChatGPT. That's a neat application. I'd love to learn more about that. Maybe I'll follow up with Rob after this. That's a cool idea. Let's see here. Here's an interesting one, Todd. From Bill, how would you respond to software leader, the C-level leadership, replacing the Scrum Master and product owner on teams with technical product managers, yet still practicing Scrum? And he's pretty sure our response will be greater than his. I don't know. We'll see. How would you respond, Todd, if the CEO or the CIO popped down and said, hey, Scrum Masters and product owners are out, and we're just going to have a technical product manager? And by the way, we're still doing Scrum.
Is that is a person to fulfill both accountabilities?
I think so.
Because I think if that person is to fulfill both accountabilities, I would start the conversation as to why that it can really create a toxic environment when you have somebody that's in charge of the what and somebody that is overlooking or the process side of things, right? What can happen there?
Yeah.
No. So here, conversely, there's nothing that says they have to be and carry the title Scrum Master, and they have to carry the title Product Owner. They're accountabilities, right, that are being fulfilled. Do we feel like they should be fulfilled by the same person? Absolutely not. So I would take a look there. That's maybe where I would start.
Yeah, I think to your comment there, Todd, we can still technically be within the boundaries of the Scrum Guide doing this, because Scrum Master and Product Owner are a set of accountabilities. They're not a job title or role. And that technical product manager could fulfill all of those accountabilities. Is that going to be a fun life for that person? Probably not. Is that a lot to take on in the course of trying to build a product? Absolutely. And I would imagine, and maybe your experience is different, the Scrum Master stuff will probably fall away and the product stuff will probably dominate. Mm-hmm. And again, to your point, that leads to some dysfunction that we cover pretty extensively in our book, right? So, I mean, I'm okay with this pattern in so much as it will probably lead to more copies of this thing being bought because you're going to create a lot of anti-patterns, but we never want to see that for teams. And so go into this carefully, like really understand the accountabilities that one person's taking on And yeah, I would buy a handful of copies of Fixing Your Scrum and distribute them, because you're going to see a lot of the anti-patterns potentially pop up.
Yeah.
Good. That's like a shameless plug, isn't it? I should be ashamed, but
That's why we wrote the book, right?
All right. Thank you, Bill. That's a great question, and we hope things go well. Andy is back with a quick question for us. Must all planned work by developers for the product come from the product backlog?
Yes.
Nice.
I mean, assuming that all of those developers are working on the same product, right? Like, I don't know, like, yes. Right. So I think where we run into problems is where teams are working on multiple things at the same time, but that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, I think you're right. So yeah, the work comes from the product backlog. Product backlog items populate a sprint backlog. A sprint backlog is executed upon, and we eventually get an increment. Cool. Here's a fun one. Very similar to the previous question about becoming a Scrum Master. I have 3 years experience as a Scrum Master. Took a 5-year break to run a food delivery business. How do I get back in the game? So this is like the gap in the resume kind of question, right? I did the job. I've sat out from the job. Now I want to come back to the job. I think you just get, well, Todd, maybe you want to take the crack. I've been speaking first quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't mind that. But so maybe I'm a little bit like maybe I'm pessimistic on this side of it. Maybe don't go in with the expectation that you're going to start as a Scrum Master right away. Maybe make that a goal to get back into the game and find a different avenue besides just going back in as a Scrum Master, right? I would see what path you can get into that would lead you back to being into the as a Scrum Master. I don't view a Scrum Master as like as an entry level position that is easy to jump into and jump out of, right? I view it as something that is a really powerful change agent, and I think that that you might have to get back into it a different way.
Yeah, or I mean, if you still feel like so first, totally agree with Todd. But if you feel like your skills are still great and it's just a matter of explaining a gap, I think that's just good interviewing skills. I think you should prepare a narrative as to what you were doing and why you think you can come back, and it should be concise and nice and tell a good story. And usually that's enough, right? But again, to Todd's point, you may not come back in the exact same position. You might have some upgrading in your skill set to do. If it's been 5 years, maybe a class, maybe some kind of additional education to show that you're back in the game, maybe some community participation, go give a conference talk, go get circulated back into the community, and that could help too. Very good. Here, Todd, is another one from Ian. Ian's been in our community for quite a while, wanting to know if spikes belong in a sprint backlog. What do you do with spikes, Todd?
I think this is one of the things where we start to get, and I think the whole Agile community gets so crazy about things sometimes, like it only should be value. You shouldn't count it unless it's value. I think you should put it in the sprint backlog. To me, it just keeps it, and it makes transparency around what's in the sprint backlog, right? And progress towards what's happening in the sprint backlog, or maybe progress towards the sprint goal. I absolutely think that it should be in the sprint backlog. It helps. If I'm a developer on that team, it's kind of like, oh yeah, we got to do this, right? So I think so. I'm sure out there's going to be people who be like, only things that deliver value should be in the sprint backlog. To me, those people don't live in reality all that much. I think that when it comes to an office environment, what do you want half of people having sticky notes that they're operating by, and the other half of the people just, I don't know. I feel like common sense, sometimes we lose that when we get up on our Agile perches, right?
Absolutely. I go back to transparency. If I have side work that I'm doing that's not clearly expressed in a sprint backlog, how transparent is our work, and how transparent is our product, and how clear is it to everyone else involved or interested in the outcome of this sprint? How clear is it to them what's being worked on? And I think you have to answer that transparency is lower if the work that we're doing is not all expressed clearly in a sprint backlog, right? And even with a spike, it should be heavily, I hate spikes. I really think this is a bad practice. And I know I'm going to get 20 tweets and a lot of comments on that. Bring it, right? And my email address is todd@agileforhumans.com. But I just think if you're going to go down this path of spiking something, it should be heavily controlled, minimal time as possible. And so I want to know the item age of this spike, especially if I'm a product owner, so I can squash it when it's turning into nonsense. And so I think, yeah, it needs to be transparent. It needs to be under the same set of metrics and rules as every other piece of work. And just stop doing them. That way we don't have to answer this question anymore. Fair enough? All right. Let's see here. How do we, yeah. Here's a quick one. And Ducci, I appreciate you being here. How do we monitor work item age using Kanban? There's a quick idea here, right, Todd?
Yeah, I think that so first of all, you have to define at what point your work starts and at what point the work ends, right? How do you monitor it? Anything that has been started that has yet to be finished is considered work item age, right? I don't know specifically if you're asking how we monitor it. I mean, a lot of the tools have this functionality available.
What if I don't have a tool, Todd? What if I just want to do work item age on a manual, card-based, old school board?
You put the time at which it started on a sticky note, and you count the days that have elapsed since then.
Yep. Within each stage of work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be in each stage of work. It just work holistically, as long as you know you're starting an endpoint. You can count it in each stage of work if you wanted, but it's just the totality of having started.
Yep. And we do have videos on work item age on the YouTube site if you would like more information on that. And we'll, for those of you watching this individual question, we'll have a link pop up right somewhere yonder there, and it will take you to that video. Very good. A LinkedIn user, thanks for the platform. Learned a lot of Agile tricks. Very cool.
Thank you, LinkedIn user.
John C., thank you again. John, thanks for being here. Juan Manuel thinks we're a dynamic duo, but who's Batman and who's Robin? That's a debate for another day. Member of our community, David. Hey, great to see you live. Hey, great to see you here. We appreciate you. Here's okay, Todd.
Oh no! Please don't encourage him. It's gone away. I'm happy that it has.
How to convince a recruiter in an interview that story points are trash. We're just gonna keep moving.
Thank you.
What's a good book? Here's a fun one, Todd. What's a good book you'd recommend unrelated to Agile that could be valuable for Scrum Masters, that or anyone else working on a team? So not an Agile book, but one that you would recommend.
I have to look. Do you have one off the top of your head?
I'm not sure. I'm looking. I really like Gridiron Genius by Michael Lombardi. I think that book had some excellent leadership ideas in it. It's all about football, right? But it's not just like the depths of football. It's decision-making and leadership in the context of being a GM of a football team. And I thought it was awesome. A highlighter all over the place. Talks about using systems. It talks about decision-making at the highest levels. It talks about having to do things like drafting a player without knowing everything about the player, like how you hedge those bets. And so Gridiron Genius by Michael Lombardi, I think is great for product owners and Scrum Masters. Awesome book. And there's actually a review of that book on our channel that you can check out as well.
I'm gonna go and so like I tend to be like a product. My mind goes product a lot. So and I love the history of it. So if you put it and view it through the lens of product management, the ultimate history of video games. I've talked about that a lot. I really like it. It's just so interesting to see how the evolution of video games and the really tough product competitiveness that went into it.
Yeah, Todd,
So I
you put
really
me
am
onto that one too. I like
I'm
it.
a pretty big fan of that. Other than that, I think that I like the I like the stuff that's involved. It's really creepy and like terrifying that it happened, but the stuff with
Oh yeah.
you know what I'm talking about.
Bad Blood.
Bad blood. For
That book
those
is
people,
terrifying.
yeah, that went as that came as a and went through the PSM course. It is the ultimate story of squirrel burgers. So, Bad Blood, that's the Theranos story, the Elizabeth Holmes stuff. I guess she was convicted now, and
In
she's,
prison.
yeah, no, she's not in prison. She's dodging. So,
No.
yeah,
Okay.
because she had a baby or something. I don't know. There's a lot there. I don't want to get into anything as it relates to that, but it's just,
It's a great book. Bad Blood is scary.
it is. Yeah. Things not to do.
Zach had a few recommendations, and I like Zach, so don't anyone take this as a negative towards Zach. I hate the book The Goal, and I also think these two are terrible. This is a
I don't
very
want to say terrible.
these are unpopular opinions, by the way. I don't think The Goal is very good, as it doesn't take a few key things into account. Phoenix Project and Unicorn Project, I fall asleep trying to read them, and I think they're highly
Really?
unrealistic.
I don't know. I don't fall asleep reading them.
I'm not a fan of them.
I think there's flaws in them, but I think they're interesting from a storytelling perspective.
Okay. So we disagree on something, which doesn't happen very often. But no, I think
I don't mind them. I don't mind them books. I wouldn't say they're great, but I don't mind them.
They bother me. But anyways, good question. We hope that helps. Let's see. I'm looking for some good. There's some good discussion happening in the chat here. That's awesome that people are helping each other out.
Is there a post on LinkedIn? There should be a post on LinkedIn you can submit.
There is. There's a post on LinkedIn. There's a post on YouTube. How about this? So Scott Walker has popped in with a question. Looking for suggestions on helping an infrastructure team working in Kanban using two different tracking systems collectively display all WIP, also showing why multiple tasks at once are bad. This sounds like disjointed work in one team, right? So two sources of truth and the inability to see both sets of work together. I think you gotta bring it together somehow. This is where Todd would use some Zapier magic and have all the work flow into some interesting Trello board and make it all.
Grab some data with Python, slap it into a central repo just to have something that you can look at. I mean, sometimes a little bit of a day writing a script to bring everything into one area to understand all the WIP is worth it, right? It shouldn't take that much to understand what all the WIP is and how it's aging. So the different question then is also show why multiple tasks at once are bad. So it's interesting because I think that in my experiences, getting teams to understand that they should limit WIP is really difficult. I suggest you start with the board as a whole. That's been useful for me as a strategy. May not be useful to you, but just say, hey, we can't have more than 20 things total in WIP at once, right? And then start to have the conversation about what that means. Limit it. Now, by the way, I just shouted 20. I'm not saying that's where you start. You could start with 5, right? And then from there, build the case that maybe you should define your workflow and have it go in stages and limit WIP in stages. So.
Yeah. Very good. I think context switching is also an interesting avenue that we talk about quite a bit, Todd, the cost of context switching. And again, this could also be where evidence-based management helps you. looking at some of those different KVAs and KVMs. And if you don't know what that means, check out our EBM series, and that could help you out as well. But I think EBM is a good way to highlight some of the issues that could be happening as well. All right. Grassel asks a question. What's the reason organizations have Agile coaches and Scrum Masters at the same time? So I have a very unpopular opinion on this. I think it's because the organizations are making a significant mistake and they don't understand what a Scrum Master actually is. And actually, Todd, I think you agree with this. The Scrum Master is the Agile coach of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of organizations instead have created these hierarchies. Well, we have an Agile coach that works with outside the team. We have Scrum Masters that work inside the team. And what they've really done is diminish the Scrum Master to an admin, right? They've diminished their role considerably. And meanwhile, the Agile coaches have no skin in the game for delivery. And then they get to become life coaches. And I don't find that model to be fulfilling. I think a lot of it stems from, well, we have this Scrum Master with 10 years of experience, and they're going to leave if we don't pay them more, but we can't pay them more unless we give them a different title. And they don't want to be a senior Scrum Master. Agile coach is the next step. So it's almost like an administrative thing. So there's lots of ways we get here. I just think it's an anti-pattern. If you're a Scrum shop, I don't understand why you have Agile coaches. Your Scrum Master is the Agile coach to the organization.
I feel like I go on a little bit of I feel like I could take this too far with this conversation, right? I don't know. And I don't know where this is all going as an industry. I feel like we're at an inflection point. We have some companies that have been struggling using Agile and adopting Scrum for years, only to find out that their organizations haven't changed at all. Right? They just they just say they're doing Agile and they do these things and they have Agile coaches, and because they're paying Agile coaches and we're paying them from big consulting firms, that it's working out and it's not. But I don't know if I want to continue this rant, right? but I think that we really need to start to take a firm look in the eyes and say, is Agile working here? And if it's not, what do we need to do that? Obviously, our first step in answering that question is going to tell you to take a deep look and start to understand what evidence-based management is and start working towards that. We truly believe that is going to unlock the answer to the question: is Agile working? Was it worth it here? And if not, how do we move forward? And by the way, that's going to be a very fact-driven conversation that may not be easy to stomach.
Right. Something that you and I talk about regularly is that people do not respond rationally to data, although we wish they did. And so as you start looking at, has Agile worked here? And if you're at one of these banks that's invested hundreds of millions of dollars, or an airline that's put, $500 million into a transformation, and you have real data that says we've gotten nothing tangible out of it, that leads to really bad, good, interesting, however you want to label them, situations that people may not respond rationally to. Is that where you're
I said that to Dan. You remember that whole thing started like 2 years ago when Dan was like, if you give people, Dan Vacanti, if you give people data, it makes a more rational conversation. I said, Dan, I think it's absolutely the opposite.
No.
If you give factual data and have a conversation based on fact, people tend to act irrationally because we hope something works out the way that we want it to. And hope is not a strategy. Right. No. And so I'm so cynical, but and since then, we've seen it a bunch.
Yeah, I mean, in all different areas, we've seen where the infusion of data has caused irrational reaction, and so we now tread lightly, and we try to make sure that when we're infusing data into a conversation, there are goals and stories and a narrative wrapped with it that's leading in a direction that's good for the organization, and not blaming or trying to demote or diminish. It's a very careful, it's got to be a careful, calculated thing. To Todd's point, you don't throw data out and hope it changes opinions. You need to be crafting a narrative and using it with goals and strategy and trying to really make these positive shifts. It's becoming an art more than a science, wouldn't you say, Todd?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But also in that cautionary tale, don't make the data fit your narrative. Drive a narrative based off of the data. It's easy to do. We see it all the time in politics.
The man asked you about your books. Why aren't you on your phone browsing them? Because Todd and I are old and we still use physical books.
I don't know what someone's talking about. Yeah. Look at all the books back there.
I mean, that's just one shelf of 9 in my office. We still use physical books. We are, I tried the e-reader, Todd, and I just can't get there.
I find it harder to use an e-reader when you're tired. So on planes after working 2 consecutive 14-hour days.
Someone told Vetcher that there would be cake. Someone lied to you. Although cake would be great for these live casts. Let's see. Was that book recommendation for the history of video games by Charlie Fish? I believe it was.
Let me look. Now I'm looking on my computer because I don't feel like turning around and wheeling back there and finding it.
I think that's right.
Stephen Kent.
Yeah,
the ultimate history of video games from Pong to Pokemon, the story behind the craze that touched our lives and changed the world.
Very good. Jefferson Faust really likes extreme ownership. I do too. I think Jocko Willink is awesome. His podcast is great. His books are must reads. Jocko is thumbs up. He's the reason why I've started to at least try to get up a little earlier each day. Can't get enough Jocko. He's great. Implemented flow metrics, using actionable agile. Scrum Master excited. I think it's going to work. Let us know how it goes. We'd love to read some comments and get your thoughts. That's an awesome experiment. We do hope it works. Scott's going to take our advice, I think, and talk about context switching to the team tomorrow. That's great.
Is that Vader? That's Vader. Good thumbs up. Scott's profile image.
Oh, nice. It is Vader.
It's Vader.
Very good. Let's see here. EBM got a cool thumbs up. Thanks, Harry. That's great. Ty, we're getting towards the end of our time box. I'm looking for one last really good
I got one
question.
I wonder if it works if I click in it. Can I try it?
Oh, yeah.
There we go. It worked. Jupe. We've got a Lego there. Who should facilitate the sprint review? The Scrum Guide did not mention anything around this. I would like to think it should be the product owner, and I would like to think that is true as well, Jupe. Because the objective behind the sprint review, again, this is another rant that I have been going on for a few years. You're starting to see some people take that rant and run with it, which is good. This is an underserved event that people tend to just use PowerPoint or do a quick demo, and we are completely missing the opportunity to adapt the product backlog. Who is ultimately accountable for the product backlog? The product owner. And if the intent of the sprint review is to adapt the product backlog, then the product owner has most at stake. However, they don't have to be the person to facilitate the sprint review. I do think it should come from their calendar. They should be sending invites to people. They need to make sure that the right people are in the room. The appropriate stakeholders are there so that we can adapt the product backlog accordingly. Doesn't necessarily mean that the product owner has to facilitate it, but end of rant, I guess, there for me.
So there is another question in the chat, Todd, that I do want to answer. I actually put a link in the chat box that should be showing up soon. Derek asked a very awesome question that I love answering. When is our next PSM2? It's in April. And I put a link to the class. It's with Simon Reindl.
Yeah,
so
that's going to be awesome.
Todd, Simon, and I, 3 days, PSM2. You don't want to miss this one. I think it's the only one we're going to do together. And so at least this year, and if it goes well, maybe we'll put another one up next year. But Todd, Simon, and I, if you've been enjoying Deeper into Scrum, it's a great 3 days to learn about being some advanced Scrum Master tips. And we think you'll enjoy that. So check out the link, Derek. And thanks for asking that. Really appreciate it. That was fantastic. Bill's happy. Bill, we're glad you're happy.
Nice. Thanks, Bill.
People are still talking about cake. Juke gave us a thumbs up.
Hey, when it comes to cake, on that, we are going to do some live in-person conferences this year.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's cake there. Actually, I could forgo cake and in lieu of cookies. I really am a cookie guy over cake. Now, I don't shy away from cake, but hopefully at those conferences that we're going to be talking about, there are cookies.
There's our next PSM2. Mary Miller, thank you, cake and cookies. She wants both, Todd. I think Mary's onto something. Choices are great.
What about cookies that taste like cake?
Ooh, that'd be a good cookie. Almost like a brownie cookie. We should work on this. Maybe for next time. Colin, you almost baited me into this one. Maybe we'll do a video coming up on that at some other point. But I'm going to resist the urge. And please come back to our next one. Do you want to know more about why I think story points are trash? I'm sure Todd would love to hear me talk more about that. But yeah, someone else is saying, come to Switzerland and bring some t-shirts. I used to spend a lot of time in Switzerland. I would love to come back. And we could probably bring some Squirrel Burger and Story Points Are Trash and Agile for Humans t-shirts as well. So give us a venue, give us a reason, and we will pop over. How about a PSM3 class? Ask us next time. +1 to Switzerland. Hey, maybe something's growing here, Todd. But I think that's it. I think we're going to call it. We're at our hour. We really appreciate everybody being here. Todd, appreciate you jumping in, especially on a lot of these. I feel like I kind of like leaned on you a little bit too much this time. So thanks for being.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Thanks for killing it as always. And yeah, we'll be around hopefully next week to do another one of these, and maybe we'll get the cadence sorted out so that everybody can, we can all be a little more consistent. Nadia, you are welcome. Thanks for being here. Howard, thank you for the kind words. There it is. Zurich. Howard, thanks for the kind words. Alex, you are welcome. Zurich is in the, I love Zurich. I used to, real quick, manage teams in Winterthur and had an apartment in downtown Zurich, and it was awesome. I would definitely come back. It's like they loved it. We did good, Todd.
All right. So long, everybody.
We will see you next time.